wasn't a robbery gone bad. There was no resistance to this guy. He just simply was going to kill somebody for no reason.
Imagine being jolted awake in the dead of night by a knock on your door. The stranger, claiming to be the police, stands outside. But instead of checking on your safety, you are met by a cold-blooded killer. Such was the fate of Gordon and Jackie McAllister from Lindsay, Ontario. It was June 1991 when the sweet elderly couple began their summer road trip aboard their motorhome. As dusk approached, they decided to stop at a scenic rest area near Blind River, Ontario, about 85 miles from the US-Canadian border. Sometime after midnight, they were awakened by a knock on their door. A man claiming to be with the police stood outside. When they opened the door, a long-haired guy with a .22 caliber rifle and a 20-gauge shotgun stormed in, demanding their valuables. Terrified, they handed over everything they had, but it didn't matter. The man opened fire, killing Jackie instantly. Gordon, although wounded, managed to escape and hide under the motorhome. The killer searched for Gordon, but before he could find him, another car pulled into the rest stop. It was driven by a 29-year-old man named Brian Major, who was immediately shot to death. The gunman then jumped into a blue van and sped away. Bleeding and in shock, Gordon was able to flag down a passing truck for help. Later, Gordon gave the police a detailed description of the attacker. But despite the intense effort by law enforcement, the case went cold for years. Then, in 1999, authorities finally got a break in the investigation. DNA technology linked a former police officer named Ronald Glenn West to the unsolved murders of 2 women in Toronto back in 1970. Authorities suspected that West might have also been behind the Blind River murders, since he lived nearby at the time and drove a blue van. His wife even stated that the composite sketch of the suspect resembled her husband in a wig. Unfortunately, that wasn't enough, and the currently incarcerated West has never been conclusively linked to the murders, which remain unsolved to this day. It was on a crisp fall day in 1985 when 67-year-old widower Dexter Stefonek left his home in Wisconsin to visit his son in Corbett, Oregon. After a couple of weeks, Dexter decided it was time to return home, still grieving the loss of his wife just a year earlier. On November 18th, he gave a farewell goodbye to his son to begin the drive. That would be the last time his family would ever see him. The next morning, a grim discovery was made. Dexter's car was found at the remote Bad Root Rest area, some 21 miles from Glendive, Montana. But it wasn't just abandoned. It had been drenched in gasoline and set ablaze. The vehicle, now a skeletal frame, held no sign of Dexter. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and still no trace of Dexter. Investigators were seemingly at a dead end. Then, 4 months later, a gruesome discovery. 17 miles from where his car had burned, Dexter's body was found, discarded in a remote dumping ground. He had been mercilessly beaten and shot twice in the back of the head. The brutality of the crime haunted everyone who heard of it. Meanwhile, investigators struggled to piece together Dexter's final moments. A custodian working at the rest area just 2 hours before the fire, recalled seeing only one other vehicle in the parking lot, a Chevrolet pickup truck. The driver? Nowhere in sight. But as the custodian was leaving, he saw something chilling. Dexter's car, pulling in, driven by a man who was not Dexter. This unknown man, carrying 2 gasoline cans, would soon vanish, leaving behind only ashes and questions. Then, another disturbing clue. Dexter's suitcase was discovered at a landfill near his body. Money was still inside, but his clothing had been scattered. It was as if someone had placed it there, months later. The case grew colder. Years passed. That is until January 2024, when a flicker of hope emerges. The Dawson County Sheriff's Office identified a possible suspect, 79-year-old Charles Gary Sullivan, already serving a 15-year sentence for a 1979 murder he committed in Nevada. Sullivan matched witness descriptions from 1985. His vehicle, his license plate, his travel patterns, his past, all of it pointed to a man more than capable of Dexter's brutal murder. And even though some of the pieces were starting to fall into place, the evidence just wasn't strong enough. When questioned, Sullivan invoked his Fifth Amendment right. And with that, the mystery of Dexter Stefonek's murder remains unsolved. It was a quiet evening on May 15, 1979, when the lives of Jane Snow's family were shattered forever. Jane, a 31-year-old mother and dedicated nurse, was on a road trip with her 2 young sons, heading toward her hometown in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. She had no idea their journey was about to take a turn into something out of a nightmare. As they pulled into the Loon Lake rest area near Gaylord, Michigan, the sun had already set. The place was quiet, calm. The parking lot was empty. Their vehicle, the only one there. Jane needed to use the restroom, so she hurried to the women's facilities, while her sons, Eric and Mark, went to the men's. Minutes passed. Then more, an agonizing stretch of time. The boys, getting bored after playing in the grassy area, began to worry. Their mother had been gone too long. They decided to check on her, hoping to push away the anxiety creeping in. What they found inside the women's restroom would haunt them forever. Jane Snow lay on the cold tiled floor, bleeding from numerous stab wounds. She'd been stabbed 23 times. The violence spoke for itself. Meanwhile, just miles away, a police officer patrolling the same stretch of highway had an encounter of his own. A hitchhiker. His name was John McAllister. As the officer studied the man, he noticed something strange. McAllister's clothes were in disarray, his hands scratched, and on his t-shirt, blood. When questioned, McAllister spun a tale of a drunken bar fight, a dispute with his wife, he claimed. The officer, unconvinced, took him in for further questioning. But when the blood was tested, it didn't match Jane's. With nothing more to hold him on, McAllister was released. And just like that, the trail went cold. Jane Snow's murder remains a mostly forgotten mystery. A desolate rest stop, an unassuming hitchhiker, 2 innocent boys left motherless. To this day, the identity of her killer remains unknown. It was April 20th, 2001, when the chilling discovery was made. It was at a quiet rest stop in Collier County, Florida, that the bodies of Curtis and Christina Meyer were found. But what at first seemed like a tragic murder-suicide actually had an eerie twist. Curtis had shot Christina in the head before turning the gun on himself. But it's what they left behind that had investigators both worried and puzzled. In a nearby trash can, investigators found a torn birth certificate belonging to a woman named Kimyala Henson. But that wasn't all. Kimyala's wallet and credit cards were also found inside the mayor's vehicle. Then, 8 days later, the story took an even darker turn. The partially buried, decomposing body of Kimyala Henson was discovered in the middle of a desolate desert outside Reno, Nevada. And if that wasn't bad enough, Kimyala had 2 young daughters, 2-year-old Shayna and 4-month-old Shasha, and they were nowhere to be found. Kimyala, originally from Portland, had plans to take her daughters to British Columbia. Her friend, Christina Meyer, and her husband Curtis had joined them on this trip. On April 4th, they all traveled to Sacramento so Kimyala could retrieve her birth certificate. The last confirmed sighting of Kimyala and her daughters was at a hotel in Redding the following evening. But things got even murkier when it was revealed that Curtis Meyer was actually Frank Oring, a fugitive wanted in Missouri for the attempted murder of his former wife. Authorities theorized that Frank and Christina lured Kimyala to retrieve her birth certificate as part of a plan to cross the border into Canada. But their ruse took a deadly turn when they murdered Kimyala so Christina could assume her identity. Then, on April 9th, Christina used Kimyala's birth certificate in Las Vegas to obtain a fraudulent driver's license under her name. The devious plot concluded with Frank Oring's murder-suicide, but it left a haunting question unanswered. What happened to little Shayna and Shasha? Unfortunately, the couple took the secret of the children's fate to their graves. A cross-country road trip, a young man on his motorcycle, and a final phone call mentioning a strange, scary-looking man. Then, nothing. For nearly 40 years, the disappearance of David Lovely has haunted his family. His motorcycle was found. His belongings were intact, but David, gone without a trace. It was August 1985. And the Lovely family was moving cross-country, from California to Massachusetts. David Lovely, just 19 years old, rode ahead on his newly acquired motorcycle. His mother Jackie and sister Allison followed behind in a Ryder moving truck. They had a system. Every 30 miles, they stopped at a rest area to check in. On August 5th, they met up in Evanston, Wyoming. David said his bike was acting up, but that he planned to push on to Fort Bridger to have it checked. It was the last time his family ever saw him. Later that day, David called a family member. His voice was calm, but what he said sent chills down their spine. He told them he had met a fellow motorcyclist, a scary-looking guy covered in tattoos, but despite his appearance, the man had helped him fix his motorcycle. After that, silence. David was never seen or heard from again. 9 days later, August 14th, 1985. A couple camping near Middle Baxter Road, not far from Rock Springs, Wyoming, made a discovery. David's motorcycle. It wasn't wrecked. It wasn't tampered with. It had half a tank of gas and was in working condition. David's wallet and belongings were still on his bike. As for David, he was nowhere in sight. He had simply vanished. David's older sisters, Allison and Karen, have different theories of what could have happened to their brother. Allison believes David may have gotten lost that night, perhaps injured, confused, possibly looking for somewhere to rest. But Karen suspects something worse. She's looked into serial killers operating in the area around that time. None quite fit. But the possibility of foul play, it can't be ruled out. Did that biker help David or harm him? No one knows. The Wyoming desert is a vast, unforgiving place. Treacherous, some would say. Easy for strangers to get lost in. But did David simply wander too far and couldn't find his way back? Or did someone take him? His family never stopped looking. They've given DNA, chased every lead, but they all led to dead ends. Then, in late 2023, a grim discovery. A human skull was found not far from where David's motorcycle had once been abandoned. To this day, investigators haven't confirmed whose remains they belong to. But for the lovely family, it was a chilling reminder that the desert may still hold answers. Until then, the Wyoming night stays quiet. And whatever happened to David Vernon Lovely remains buried within its howling winds.